Hello everyone, welcome to all of you. Antes de empezar, un anuncio técnico. Tenemos la interpretación en español, en inglés, español y francés, y pueden seleccionar esta opción en sus pantallas en la parte de abajo, en el icono del globo terráqueo. Y si no seleccionan nada, escucharán las interpretaciones en el idioma original. Avant de commencer, une petite annonce technique. Nous avons la traduction en français, anglais et espagnol. Et vous pouvez sélectionner la langue au bas de votre écran en appuyant sur la petite icône du globe. Et si vous ne sélectionnez pas de canal, vous serez automatiquement sur la langue originale. So before starting, we have only one technical announcement. We have interpretation for this event. So in English, French, and Spanish, and you can select your language pressing on the small icon with a globe at the bottom of your screen. And if you don't select anything, you will be in the original channel, I believe, the original language. So with that, again, a very, very warm welcome to all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for those who join from different parts of the world. It's just incredibly great to see that we can have this opportunity to reconnect with a broader group of people. We will be talking about the latest news and future opportunities for the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. I want to also mention before giving the objectives and giving the floor to other speakers that I want to say that this event is recorded, and we will share the video of it, the recording, with all of you afterwards. And you can interact with us, with the speakers, and through the Q&A function. So you can send your comments and questions in that box so that we will take care of them, we will be answering them, and they will be made visible to everyone in the different language we have available, so English, French, and Spanish. And I have to say, because of the time, I will be very strict on time, so I apologize already for the colleagues who will be speaking. I will really try to stick to only 2 minutes per person. So as you see, we are several of us online, and there are all speakers that will give just very short inputs. And then we have a couple of more colleagues who may join, and we will try to answer comments or questions all together as a collective. So with that, I just want to recall that the objectives of this gathering, we are really, really happy to be finally able to give updates about what is happening with the right to a healthy environment, and especially in New York, because as some of you know, there is a process ongoing in New York at the General Assembly, but also the second objective is, again, to reconnect with the broader group of you who have been working on this issue and to see different perspectives and opportunities from our different constituencies. I don't say more. I give immediately the floor to our first input, and this is a short recorded message from David Boyd, who is the UN Special Rapporteur on Environment and Human Rights. So if we can have the video by David, that would be great. Thank you.
The UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and the Environment. Friends and colleagues, as you all know, we are living in the midst of an unprecedented global environmental emergency. The climate crisis, the collapse of biodiversity, and pervasive toxic pollution that kills 9 million people every year. And yet this is also a time of great opportunity. We have the opportunity to achieve the transformative changes needed to attain a just and sustainable future. And one of the most important catalysts for those transformative changes is the human right to live in a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Thanks to the tremendous work of civil society organizations and indigenous peoples organizations last year, we were able to secure a resolution from the UN Human Rights Council recognizing this right at the global level for the first time. And now we are on the brink of achieving a similar breakthrough at the UN General Assembly. This resolution will be a powerful tool in the hands of civil society, communities, and indigenous peoples. But we need to ensure that we have the pressure on 193 states so that it gets adopted in July. The right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment includes clean air, safe and sufficient water, healthy and sustainably produced food, non-toxic environments where we can live, work, study, and play, healthy ecosystems and biodiversity, and of course, a safe climate where we can all prosper. So this fundamental human right can be very powerful once we achieve this General Assembly resolution. I hope that you'll join forces with us to push this across the finish line. And I'd like to close by thanking each and every one of you for the inspiring work that you do on behalf of the people we love and this beautiful blue-green planet that we all share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. I will make sure that we say thank you to him live. And now, without further ado, I pass immediately the floor to our next input speaker, who is Sebastian Druck from CIEL, the Center for International Environmental Law. Seb is the Human Rights and Climate Change Campaign Coordinator. So, Sebastian, you have the 2 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us today. And thank you as well for all of you who participated to this campaign so far. Really appreciate to having you again with us today. If we could have a presentation on, I will just have a couple of slides to highlight where we stand on this process towards the global recognition of the right to healthy environments. Hopefully the presentation will come. Yes, excellent. So one thing that's very important for us to consider as we start this conversation is that the right to healthy environments is already recognized in over 155 countries in different ways, whether it's at the national or regional level. And what has been missing for decades is a global recognition by the United Nations to engage the UN to make sure that we mobilize the broadest political support possible. In 2020, the core group of countries working on human rights and the environment of the Human Rights Council in Geneva, so that's Costa Rica, Maldives, Morocco, Slovenia, and Switzerland, proposed to actually fill that global gap by actually moving towards a global recognition by the UN of its right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Civil society immediately stepped in, together with indigenous peoples' organization, to really consistently push since then, both the core group, but also other UN member states, to make sure that these proposals will really be turned into an actual decision by the United Nations. This campaign lasted a little bit more than a year, but got us to a point in October 2021, so just about 8 months ago, when finally a resolution was tabled at the UN Human Rights Council and was actually approved with overwhelming support from states. 43 states out of 47 sitting at the Human Rights Council voted in favor. Russia was the state to call for a vote, and 99 states actually supported explicitly the resolution by sponsoring or voting in favor of the resolution. So overwhelming support, thanks to a very large mobilization by civil society, that really made it impossible for states actually not to vote in favor of what is a very basic idea. So where are we now? The next step has been to work towards elevating the issue to the highest political decision-making body of the UN, which is the UN General Assembly in New York. You will hear some of my colleagues explaining why this is particularly important. But basically, since October, we have consistently pushed to ensure that actually what was achieved at the UN Human Rights Council will be translated into action by the UN General Assembly. Finally, after many months, a breakthrough took place this Monday in New York with the presentation of a draft resolution that's very similar to what was adopted in Geneva by the 5 countries that I've already named. So again, Costa Rica, Maldives, Morocco, Slovenia, and Switzerland, who presented this draft resolution to all UN member states in New York. And they have a very tight timeline in mind because the text was already approved in Geneva. So there will be 2 negotiations taking place in the coming weeks. And then finally, we expect the adoption of the resolution by the UN General Assembly at the end of the month. So I really want to stress that this huge breakthrough victory, what a lot of states consider not possible to achieve actually in October, is something that surprised a lot of actors and really stressed the fact that civil society and indigenous people's pressure can turn these proposals into something that becomes impossible for states to actually oppose. We have only 4 weeks, so we really invite you to engage, and colleagues will explain at the end of the panel how to do so.
Thank you so much, Seb, for that, for setting the scene again for us, where we are, and immediately followed by Roberto Borrero, who is Program and Communications Coordinator at the International Indian Treaty Council. Roberto, you will give us the perspective of indigenous peoples organizations about the importance of the recognition of the right for you. Roberto, you have the floor.
Home, thank you. Taigwe, Guaitia Ono. Greetings, relatives. I'm Roberto Mucaro Aguibana Borrero. I'm an indigenous Taino person, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the International Indian Treaty Council. I'm very pleased to be here to share a little bit on the importance of the recognition of the right to a healthy environment from an indigenous peoples organization's perspective. As many of you know, the United Nations has long recognized a special relationship of indigenous peoples and the environment. According to UN estimates, indigenous peoples make up about 5% of the world population, yet we safeguard about 80% of the world's remaining biodiversity, and we manage or hold tenure to about 25% of the world's land surface. Our peoples have done this from time immemorial by thinking not only of our present, but our future generations. And so, as previously stated by the special rapporteur, I know all of us on this call are well aware that we're in a climate and environmental crisis. And I'm here to remind folks that indigenous peoples are on the front lines of this crisis. So considering that indigenous peoples are among the highest groups of human rights and environmental defenders who are murdered each year defending lands, territories, and our sacred resources, it's really critical that the United Nations General Assembly reaffirm the right to a healthy environment this year. This would help us with our activism on the ground. This would support our work promoting the United Nations Declaration on the rights of indigenous people, promoting the respect for that declaration and the implementation. And we look forward to continuing to support this effort to put additional pressure on the UN member states to reaffirm that we have the right to a healthy environment. We know this, and we hope that they can see this too. So with that, I say thank you, Jahom, for giving me the time and the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Roberto, for your words. And I immediately give the floor to the next input, the next speaker, who will take us through to the right to a healthy environment through a gender and intersectional lens or perspective. And happy to give the floor to Katie Tobin, who is Senior Program Manager at WIDO, Women's Environment and Development Organization. Katie, you have the floor.
Thanks so much, Sandra, and thanks to the organizers and my fellow speakers. So as Sandra mentioned, I'm representing WIDO, the Women's Environment and Development Organization, as well as the Women's Major Group, which organizes feminist civil society participation around the UN Sustainable Development arena. So this idea of having enshrined at the GA a right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is really core to our demands and to our understanding of the intersections between environmental justice and gender justice for 3 reasons. First is because, very similar to what Roberto was saying about indigenous peoples, women, girls, gender diverse people are on the front lines and disproportionately affected by discrimination and disaster of any kind, and lack redress for violations of this right, alongside people facing discrimination of all kinds. So that's where the intersectional perspective comes in. And secondly, because, like Roberto was saying as well, as a lot of the responsibility and the stewardship and the knowledge and the solutions are held by women and gender diverse people as subsistence farmers, as holders of seeds, as practitioners of traditional medicine, and that agency and those solutions need to be recognized. And finally, as others have also mentioned, it's really clear that the way that our normative framework and our policy space is set up is not functioning to protect either the rights of people or the rights of the environment. So having this, this right enshrined that really looks at how they overlap is really key for us to anchor our advocacy and the accountability of states and of corporations and of other actors who are violating this right and have been for centuries. So we really see this as having the potential to shift the narrative, provide that anchor for us as feminist movements, as environmental movements, as movements that overlap and stand in solidarity with the others here, so that we can get towards a world that centers people and planet rather than power and profit. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Katy. And now we'll hear from Astrid Puentes, who is the former co-executive director of AIDA, the Inter-American Association for Environmental Defense. And Astrid will talk to us about benefits of the recognition, the protection of the right from the perspective of Latin America. I mean, giving some examples. So Astrid, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, Sandra, y buen día para todos y todas. Es un gusto vernos reunidos aquí y hablando, pues reuniéndonos de diferentes rincones y hablando en diferentes idiomas, porque creo que esto es justo un tema esencial que refleja la globalidad y la importancia del tema. Desde América Latina, el derecho al ambiente sano ha sido esencial, sobre todo para pueblos indígenas, comunidades afrodescendientes, comunidades campesinas y mujeres, para avanzar en la protección ambiental. Sabemos que nos falta mucho, pero ha sido un instrumento que nos ha servido bastante para conseguir, por ejemplo, detener proyectos, proteger mejor algunas zonas, incluso protegidas que no estaban adecuadamente protegidas, mejorar algunas programas también. Por ejemplo, en Colombia, el derecho al ambiente sano ha sido fundamental para hacer una moratoria de fracking. En muchos países de América Latina hemos logrado detener varias represas también usando este derecho. Y un tema esencial que me parece es que hemos visto el liderazgo de América Latina tanto en los estados y ojalá desde organizaciones y movimientos para que podamos concretar este derecho, porque a nivel global también es necesario para que lo podamos fortalecer a nivel interno en América Latina y por supuesto en el Caribe. Tenemos la decisión, la OC23 de la Corte Interamericana, que históricamente reconoce el ambiente sano como un derecho humano y ojalá que podamos ayudar a que esto sea global. Gracias.
Super, gracias, Astrid. And now I will turn to Saro Legborsi Saro Piagbara, who is the president of MOSAP, the Movement for the Survival of Ogoni People in Nigeria. Saro will talk to us about the right to a healthy environment and what it means for local and national struggles. Saro, you have the floor. Do we have Saro? I don't see him, so maybe we can just continue until we fix the problem maybe with this connection. So next is Elaine Gaia Aleli, who is Deputy Leader, Governance Practice at WWF International. Elaine, you will talk to us about the right to a healthy environment and what it means for environmental governance. Elaine, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Sandra, and hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. So colleagues have already started to talk about some of the issues and have given some examples on why the right to a healthy environment is important for environmental governance. And just a quick check about what I'm referring to about that. It's the set of rules and policies and institutions that determine how we interact or how we should interact with the environment. But it's also about environmental justice, which recognizes that the reality that certain groups in society bear unequal environmental burdens like unhealthy living conditions. And it also seeks to ensure that all communities have access to information and decision makers that allow them to take action and create positive change for themselves. So the universal recognition of the right to the healthy environment by the UN General Assembly would allow us to all make big strides forward on both of those things. First, it would cement our understanding in the international human rights framework that the environmental degradation, massive biodiversity loss, and the impacts of climate change we are seeing today are all actually human rights crises. It would strengthen, and we have a lot of evidence of this, that the recognition of this right leads to more effective national and local environmental protection with benefits for people. We could look at examples in water and air quality where the right has been recognized by national governments. In Costa Rica, for example, which has strengthened laws and policies tackling water pollution. With 1 in 3 people globally lacking access to safe drinking water, such actions are life-changing. In other places, the right's been used as a safety net to address environmental harms that aren't addressed in other laws, including, for example, governing importation and use of plastic bags and containers in Uganda or air quality in Sri Lanka. The critical element for me is that universal recognition raises a bar for everyone across the world, regardless of where they live. Everyone deserves the right to enjoy a healthy environment, and as the principal UN policymaking body, the UNGA needs to give us the clear political commitment that recognizes this and empowers governments and citizens to deliver real-world improvements that ensures the health of the natural world on which we all depend. I'll stop there. Sandra, thanks very much.
No, I thank you so much, Elaine, and immediately giving the floor to the next input by Noel Kumpe, who is head of policy at BirdLife International. And Noel will talk to us about the implications of the right to a healthy environment for other UN processes. And in particular, I guess Noel will take the example of the importance of the rights for the negotiations around the CBD, the Convention on Biodiversity. Noel, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, yeah. So I'm from BirdLife International, as you mentioned. We're the world's largest nature conservation partnership with NGO partners in 115 countries. On Earth Day in 2020, we launched our One Planet, One Right campaign for the UN to recognise the right to a healthy environment. So we're really pleased to be working with all the colleagues here on the call and you all to this end. So following strong calls from key actors, including the UN Secretary General, and positive engagement by civil society, last month's Stockholm +50 declaration was incredibly strong on both recognising the right to a healthy environment and also importantly calling for its implementation as step 1 of a 4-step pathway towards the critical paradigm shift we all need. This implementation aspect is absolutely key, and this is where other UN policies and frameworks come in to help operationalise the right. We therefore also need to be reinforcing the importance of embedding both these aspects, this recognition and the implementation, into other policy frameworks like the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, as mentioned, which is currently being negotiated under the Convention on Biological Diversity. So the challenge here, though, is that while the UNGA resolution is still under discussion, many even supportive states are reluctant to proactively voice support for or negotiate on the right to a healthy environment in these other policy processes. And some are even refusing to acknowledge the right. So we found this in the Global Biodiversity Framework negotiations last week in Nairobi, where, for example, one party stated that it was yet to be settled in international law. And similar comments be made in recent discussions on processes like the Commission on the Status of Women, for example. So basically, it's key to have this UNGA resolution passed in this current UNGA session, so as soon as possible, in order to provide a clearer basis for integrating the right to a healthy environment into all these other policy processes. So, and not only those ones I've mentioned as examples, but also the UNFCCC, the Climate Convention, UNEA, and many others. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Noel. And just we have 2 last interventions, and then really we would want to open for the discussion Q&A. I see already great comments in the chat, so just hold on for two more speakers. We are very quick. And the next one is Paloma Costa, who is a Brazilian youth activist, and she's one of the advisors of the Secretary General on climate, and she will express this call for urgency from a youth and indigenous people's perspective. Paloma, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Sandra, and everyone for the invitation. And I will be very brief. Of course, having the right to a healthy environment is a big conquest for humanity, but still we need to acknowledge that came a little bit late in time, right? Because we need to understand that having the right to a healthy environment is what guarantees us the life, not only in the present, but also in the days to come, in the future. My generation, the youth generation, is the biggest generation in the whole history of humanity. And still people fail to see how we are present here now, facing, fighting together, struggling together, and finding creative solutions and alternatives for us to face the biggest impacts that our humanity are facing. People tend to see that we are going to be future leaders, future CEOs, but we are right now leaders, leading initiatives, leading solutions, together with the people that are in the front lines, together with people that are fighting in grassroots actions, in grassroots initiatives. And we are here fighting for a space, for a world where we can be able to live with quality, with dignity, with health, and with the possibility on thinking that what we do today to lead our studies, for example, we will have a world to live in the future. We will be able to build a family, to have a job, to have the right to live, which is the biggest right for everyone, for all humans being what we conquested as humanity, and to have and to understand what it means, the right to a healthy environment is understand that in guaranteeing the rights to indigenous people, to young people, it's guaranteeing that we are going to have life not only built here and help happening here in the present, but also in the days to come. We have to understand that this fight, it doesn't start today, but it is a fight that we should be leading each and every day. And everyone here should be heroes in our own story, guaranteeing and understanding that having the right to live in a place where it has dignity, where it has access to a quality air, to everything, is what guarantees us to keep living and to be alive. Thank you.
Heartfelt thanks, Paloma. Thank you so much. I think we may have Sarah with us now. Yes, great. So I think, Sarah, I announced you earlier. I'm so happy that you managed to connect. So Sarah is again from the Movement for the Survival of Goni people in Nigeria. It's president of the movement. So Sarah, I'll give you the floor.
Hello.
Hello, Sarah. We hear you. You can go.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. It's been an interesting discussion. For us in Mosop and Ogoni, of course, we see this as a very important and a critical moment in our history as a people and as those who have been standing up for the environment. This declaration on human rights and environment for us is something that we yearned for over the years, that there is no need for us to divide, create an unnecessary division between what is in the environment and what is supposed to be human rights. Because as far as we are concerned, we have been a people that depend on the environment all over the years and in millennia. And whenever anything goes wrong with the environment, it goes wrong with our well-being. And we believe that human rights is for our well-being and for our dignity. And for us, when the environment is destroyed, because we live largely on the environment, you destroy our right to food, you destroy our life to clean air, you destroy our life to clean water, you destroy our life to our own sense of dignity. You destroy our life to our cultural rights when you invade our territories, invade our forests in the name of development aggression, and we can't enter the forest to practice the sort of thing we practice in our own sort of belief systems. So that whole violation on the environment affects the sort of our enjoyment of our cultural rights, our economic rights, our social rights, and of course, lead to the ultimate, which of course is the right to life. So for us, is a declaration that we want to stand to support, and we encourage everybody to support. I spoke in one meeting yesterday, and I said, it is high time that we also set up our own different tax teams, look at the different governments and entities that perhaps voted against during the passage of the declaration at the Human Rights Council last year, and see how we can now test tax teams to start going to meet with them on the need, because as this thing move to the General Assembly, let it not get there and some states work against its passage. We had the same experience when we were doing the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Of course, all of us know that the declaration was passed at the Human Rights Council, and it got to the General Assembly. Because of African government not agreeing to issue self-determination, it was not passed at the General Assembly in 2006. We have to set up a different tax team again to start engaging from the African Union in Addis Ababa up to New York. And by 2007, having convened the states involved, they all voted for its passage in 2007. So I think that part of what we can do is to still continue to build that momentum that we built over the years, set up teams, look at the government that perhaps were not in support of it during the declaration was passed in last year, and see how we can go back to them to still convince them to be part of the process, to convince them to on the need for them to support this whole thing as it goes to the General Assembly. So that will be one of the my proposal for strategy moving forward. But I think that we are at a historic moment. Those have also been following the process for a long time, since the early 2000s, the then Commission on Human Rights know how the debate have been going on, how they're frustrated by the multinationals and all of them. And here we are, I mean, having gone this far, I think we still need to put some more effort, galvanize the support we need to galvanize. But I think that affected communities must be well mobilized between now and September. I mean, between now and the General Assembly, must be more mobilized at the national level for them to put more pressure on their government to ensure that this is passed. So that will be my little sharing on this whole thing. I think we are at a strategic moment of history, because this whole thing is also dovetailing into what is going on the climate change process. There is no way to separate the climate change issue also from the whole question of the environment. And today, now we're taking a human rights approach to addressing the climate change issue. Of course, the passage of this declaration at the General Assembly will go a long way in giving impetus to the work or the sort of integration we're expecting to happen within the climate change mitigation adaptation process. So it's something that once achieved, we also lead to other developments within other sectors, biodiversity sector, the climate change sector, which are the bigger crises we face now in the world. So I think we should all do the best we can, the lobbying we can, the advocacy we can do, both at the grassroots and the national level, to make sure this is passed into the General Assembly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. And this is exactly, a perfect transition to the next and very last speaker from our part, giving input. And this is Chiara Liguri, who is policy advisor at Amnesty International. And Chiara has prepared a short overview of some of what Sarah was speaking about, like opportunities to engage and to mobilize towards the process at the GA and further. So Chiara, you have the floor, and I see there are really super interesting questions already in the Q&A, so we will dispatch them afterwards and address them. Chiara, you have the floor.
Thank you, Sandra, and thank you all, because you've all made a very clear case of why this rights is crucial in this context of crisis, and why we are now facing a very, very important opportunity to make progress. And so basically, we have in practice, what are we asking states to do? We are asking all states to support the resolution in the United Nations General Assembly in New York, but not just to say that they support, but actually also oppose any attempts to water down the text, because we know that some states are going to try to oppose it, propose amendments, try to make void all the efforts done so far. And so we also need those supportive states to stand up and against those efforts. But also we need actually states to be present in the room and actually vote, because the vote is going to happen at the end of July, when many people in New York are going to start going on leave. And so it's actually a very, very practical issue that we need to ensure that not only states are supportive, but they're actually present in the room and push that button and vote in favor. Next slide, please. And so basically what now is just a slide on what you can do, how you can support this process. Two key requests. One is lobby your representative at the UN in New York. You can send a letter, for example, and we have provided a model letter and the list of emails that of all the permanent missions in New York. You will receive all this material afterwards. And also you can help build support, public support. So showing that it's not just a few organizations asking this, but it's basically a big movement behind this. And so you can do this in social media. You can tag your permanent mission again in New York with social media messages. And we are providing again a toolkit with some suggested key messages and all the handles of the permanent missions. And you also see the hashtag. So without further ado, I think we can open the conversation, and we really hope that you can join efforts with all of us at this critical time.
Thank you very much, Chiara, for that. And indeed, some of the questions that are in the Q&A really were on that. What can we do, and concretely? So I hope that some of it has been addressed by Chiara's presentation. But of course, there are also questions about why now and not in September at the GA, and what are the resistances by states. So maybe on these two questions, I don't know if maybe Seb, you want to come back on the timing of the tabling, and then I can go back to Elaine, Noel, or Chiara for the political mapping or others. But Seb, maybe you want to come super quickly on the timing.
Excellent, and thank you for this question. I'm sure it's relevant also for many others. September is what we often think about when we think of UN General Assembly, but it's just actually the opening of the session, and then the session goes continuously throughout the year. So there is no reason to wait 2 more months if this can be done right now. Just by delaying it further, we just run risks that other priorities dominate the agenda. So while civil society often hear about the UNGA and think about September, actually a resolution adopted at the end of this month would be as powerful. And also, just to mention briefly, the president of the UN General Assembly right now is Maldives, which is one of the 5 countries that we've mentioned as championing this resolution. About the timeline for the negotiations just now, we expect a couple of negotiations to take place at the UNGA next week and the week after, and then the tabling of the resolution for final adoption at the end of this month. So this is the timeline we are looking at the moment, and there seems to be no reason for this to be delayed. Finally, as part of this question, there was a question on challenges that we expect. There might be states trying to undermine, to weaken the text. We know that this resolution will not be reopened in the following years. So it's important that this resolution is not compromised, and the wording is not weakened for the sake of bringing more states on board. Another challenge might be that states are just not showing up at the end of July, not putting enough political attention to this process. So this is where having civil society voices can really make this a priority for them. And that's maybe where we turn to the next colleague who can explain how to do so.
Thank you, Seb. So I don't know, Elaine, Noel, if someone wants to, or Chiara wants to come on other state positions, but also I think Astrid, you may want to chime in on the questions by Luis. There's also one about state resistance and positions. And then I think, Sarah, you may want to answer a question that was on Nigeria or another questions. But turning to who wants to go first? Elaine, Noel? Or
I can
yeah.
just pop in and Noel can complete. So we know that there's some, I mean, there's several countries that are not supportive or working against, but we're also, the last time in Geneva, civil society outreach was effective. So we could maybe talk about the UK, Norway, Austria, Australia. Australia not necessarily effective. So those are ones to work to ensure that at least they don't oppose, they can abstain. But I think it's also really important, what we've heard a couple times, is that the states that are supportive but are perhaps have been quiet, or as Seb said, not giving this political priority, are some of the African states. So I think also they're really going to to your governments and encouraging them to be there to support it, to be part of this movement, to be part of making history. Also selling the positive aspects of this is really important, not only working to shift those who might be in opposition at the moment. But Noelle, do you want to add anything in addition?
Yeah, I guess it's just to make the point that this is a kind of politically important resolution, but it's not a legally binding one. And I think there's some concern, and this is the sort of legal issues around the possible interpretation in a legalistic way from some of the states. So some of the those with Anglophone legal systems, which has sort of led to some of the issues, some of the concerns from states like the UK or Australia. And we need to be clear that this is not a legally binding treaty process. It's a UN General Assembly resolution, and it provides real political historic importance, but it doesn't hold states to account in a legal sense. So I think that's something that has been a bit unclear, and I think it's about flagging to some of the countries that are kind of holding back, but actually, are being voicing kind of strong ambitions on climate and nature, that they can't, say that in one breath and then not back this resolution in the other. So this is really important that we kind of have all states behind this, and to sort of allay those concerns, I guess, in terms of the kind of detail of this, the legalistic detail, which can come up as a concern, I guess.
Thank you so much. And again, I want to give Astrid the opportunity to chime in if she wants. But before that, just saying we have this question on the UN Summit of the Future in 2023. And I was wondering whether Roberto, Victoria, Katie, you may have anything to say on that. But before you make your mind of who wants to speak on that, potentially, I give the floor to Astrid if you want to come in, Astrid.
Muchas gracias, Sandra. Bueno, brevemente, en relación con los estados, y salieron nuevas preguntas respecto de lo que mencionó Noel de la validez de la resolución. Entonces, bueno, los estados ya mencionó antes Elaine, que hay algunos estados que históricamente se han opuesto, como Rusia y China. Y en el proceso, tanto en Ginebra como ahora también, el Reino Unido y Noruega, que puede ser sorprendente, pero han sido muy complicados para mover hacia adelante. Brasil, hasta últimos momentos en Ginebra, complicó la discusión respecto del procedimiento y que entonces ahora lo que sería muy importante es que, como mencionó Seb también, estamos como defendiendo el texto que está, entonces que ojalá aprueben lo que hay para que no se debilite y que tampoco se dilate la discusión. Y respecto de lo que dijo Noel, creo que es muy importante resaltar que lo que ella mencionó, diciendo sobre todo a los países anglófonos que la resolución no es vinculante, son mensajes, por favor, a nivel privado con los estados, no público, porque a nivel público es un mensaje que debilita mucho el reconocimiento. Entonces es algo que ayuda a convencer si ustedes hablan con los gobiernos directamente o con las misiones, pero que a nivel público no es un mensaje que estamos reforzando mucho porque, y alguien lo escribió ya en el chat, debilita el reconocimiento que justamente queremos que sea fuerte, que sea un mensaje histórico. Entonces, bueno, quería como mencionar estos dos puntos. Gracias.
Sí, gracias, súper importante. So this question on the UN Summit of the Future, and then I turn to Saro for the questions on Nigeria. And please, if you can use the Q&A so that if we don't have time to respond to all online, at least people can type in the chat. And again, we have also another colleague who was not on the list of speakers, but Victoria from the Global Pact. Really feel free to chime in if you want in this discussion. Again, on the summit, I don't know if Roberto, Victoria, or Katie, or maybe someone else has an opinion on that, views to share. No.
I can just say really quickly, thanks. Yeah, I haven't followed it. I'm not aware of the summit, but I do think that we should kind of map out as kind of the next stage, what are the advocacy moments to make sure that, you know, hopefully the resolution will pass, and then how we implement it. Similar to the question that was in the chat about the overlaps with the human right to water and sanitation. I think absolutely where we can make connections as much as possible to either both other policy processes and opportunities that exist, and then overlapping kind of pieces of the normative framework, which yes is non-binding, but is hugely important for advocacy. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Katie, for that. I see, Roberto, you wanted to comment on something related to that. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, just very quickly. I think just I don't have much information about that particular summit, but just expanding a little bit about what was just said is that we have the high-level political forum coming up. We just got out of the permanent forum on indigenous issues, and the permanent forum itself also issued support for this. So I think that it's really imperative that in all these type of spaces that we mobilize and activate to make sure that these gatherings also come out with some kind of statement of support. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, as Katie and you are saying, I mean, there are these different big opportunities to push for the right, and the Summit of the Future will come from our Common Agenda report, right, of the SG. So it will have a lot of different implications and opportunities. I think I'll turn to Saro, and Saro, the questions for you on Nigeria, what is the state of the environment in the Nigeria Delta after the murder of Kenzaro Wiwa, and how will this human rights resolution help in protecting the human rights and biodiversity? And I guess that summarizes some of the other comments on the situation there. So if you can try to answer this in a short.
The first thing I'd like to say is that we are at a historic moment in this whole process of getting this declaration passed. Whether we like it or not, it still forms part of a body of soft law that can also still be used to make our cases. I mean, those are also been following developments in international human rights process. Know that from declaration you move to making it legally binding thing. So for us, it still forms part of the body of soft law instrument that can be used, just like every other declaration has been done. So I think just like the last speaker said, this is something we need to keep internally and to start going out to say not legally binding and all that, which is had the capacity to discourage people. While we're moving toward getting a legal binding instrument, I think this is a first step, a major boost to whatever thing we're going to do in the future. So we'll let us get this one right, do in a way that the document as it is at the moment is not watered down. And that is part of what I wanted to ask, if is there a team already in New York to work on this issue? Sandra, you know the difference between Geneva and New York. Geneva is purely a human rights thing, New York is purely a political thing. So we need to get a team. If there is no team at the moment, we need to be a team at New York working on this and pushing this stronger. People may do things at the national level, but you still need a team in Geneva in New York, that have some contact and relationship with the Secretariat and with some of the missions in New York to push this further. So that for me is one thing we need to do or put in place. As I said earlier, we need to also get a strong involvement of those from the victim communities, particularly from third world that are quite where we see the environmental protection quite weak and have become a serious victim of violation of environmental rights. we need to see a way of getting them into this process. And then on the issue of protection of environment since the hanging of Ken Saro-Wiwa, of course, we made some major progress. Today, after this whole campaign, the global campaign, we have a situation where UNEP was invited to do an assessment of the Ghanaian environment. And after a multi-year study, UNEP came out with a report clearly showing that oil exploitation in Niger Delta, particularly in Ogoni, had destroyed the Ghanaian environment and recommended that Shell support a process of clean up of Ogoni land. That process has begun, even though very slow, the process has begun. And beyond that, of course, we see the report as building a framework for clear environmental governance in Nigeria. So what is left for us now is to see how we can push collectively for the implementation recommendations of the report. Because the report did not just talk about the clean up of Ogoni land, it talked about building a new environmental framework and governance for Nigeria. So to that extent, there is some positive thing going on, but we need some more greater strength to push it further so that the report is implemented in a way that, of course, follows the recommendation of the report. So that is where we are on the environmental question in Nigeria. We are still facing in up north, of course, the whole question of desertification, causing some of the conflict we're having about herdsman conflict in some part of the Nigeria. It's also because of the climate change issue there that is leading to desertification in another part of the country that is making foliage and further difficult for herders to have. And they're moving down south, believing that they can get more foliage for their cows and leading to the conflict we are seeing in those areas. So we have all complexity of problem. Of course, the chemical issue is still there, still battling with in the area. But I think, as I said, the UNEP report actually provides a basis for a collective intervention in building a serious environmental governance framework in Nigeria.
Yeah, so sorry to interrupt. I mean, I see time running, but I feel free to complement your responses online. I mean, in the Q&A, where the questions are, so or in the chat. So don't hesitate to complement if you want to give some more elements on these specific questions. I want to give the opportunity to answer, and thank you so much, Saro, for the responses. Maybe Victoria, you want to come in on the New York landscape in response to what Sarah was asking or saying, and maybe others are interested to know about a bit the coalition or the group in New York. So Victoria, I give you the floor.
Yes, thank you, Sandra. Just to add that there is a coalition of civil society organizations working on this together, trying to get the core group of countries to pledge this resolution, and we're also doing all this campaign. It's been running for the past couple months, and if you would like to join and help with this campaign, and that's part of what we were saying at the beginning with Chiara, saying that we could contact our governments, sign petitions, and also take on social media to talk about this. That would be really useful.
Thanks a lot. So yes, I see comments or questions, whether we want to share the recording and the notes. Yes, the recording, I understand we will be able to share it. And I'm looking whether we have missed questions. Yeah, I think we have a question on the schedule of the summit and the GA again. And again, recognizing that different colleagues joined at different times. So maybe it's a good time to just recap a bit the main timeline. And again, colleagues who are responding, I mean, don't hesitate to respond directly to the questions on the Q&A so that people also see the questions and the answers. Otherwise, no one sees them. So I recognize that it is a bit weird. So yeah. If someone can come in again, maybe, I don't know, Seb, you had set the landscape, so I don't know if you want to come back again on the main timeline for the process.
Sure, just very briefly, I do not believe that there is a public schedule that you can watch online, but basically next week we expect that there will be one session of consultation among states. It's not open to civil society, so that's why our intervention is particularly important, and where actually in New York, it does not make a big difference at the end of the day whether you're based in New York or not, because you cannot enter the building for the most part, except for the high-level political forum. which is not directly related to this process. But so one negotiation next week, one the week after, and at the real end of this month, the adoption either by consensus or if a state calls for a vote, by a vote in the plenary room of the UNGA. We'll make sure to circulate the information if a vote takes place to all of the participants today with an email just before it takes place. We should know that on short notice. And maybe just to echo again the question on the UN Summit of the future, there'll be many opportunities in the future to work on implementation, on the articulation of the rights, and how we turn these into reality. This resolution at the end of this month is not going to do all of the job. We need to continue the work. So the UN Summit of the future is just one example of those opportunities.
Thanks a lot, Seb. I want to give the opportunity to a couple of colleagues who may have or haven't spoke again, maybe Paloma or others, if you see any questions or comments that you would like to comment on before we wrap up in a couple of minutes. Just feel free to raise your hand. If not, I see a good suggestion from Ashfaq. Ashfaq, don't hesitate to get back to us, one of us here, so that we can potentially improve or include the thing. And Seb will answer more extensively in the Q&A, so you will get your answer, Ashfaq. Thanks a lot for that. But thanks for the suggestion again. So yeah, I don't know if there is anyone who has a last comment. Otherwise, we can, I guess, wrap up. And I see another comment. Yes, so another proposal by Beth on the HRPF and with the women's major group. I guess several major groups would be interested in or should be interested in this issue. So as Victoria was saying, there are some people of us, some colleagues who are based in New York and maybe others who will be able to interact with the HRPF. So I guess this will be important that the major groups are also interacting with this campaign, and I guess our colleagues who are here present either on screen or or behind the scenes who will be interacting at the HRPF should take good notes of these comments, including to reach out to the women's major group for the Color of the Day campaign, for instance, and other opportunities. So it might seem a bit anonymous, but don't worry, there are people behind the screen also who take good notes of these comments and who will be able to reach out, again, the colleagues of us who are based in New York in particular, or those who will interact directly with the HRPF. Yes, so we have a last question maybe that could be good to answer. It's in the chat, as far as I can see. It's from, and yes, thank you, Katie, for picking up on the women's major group. It's from Dave Timms, who's asked what are the main elements of the draft resolution that are contested and could be watered down. So maybe for a more fine-tuned advocacy or outreach. Who would like to come on that one? I don't know, Astrid, Chiara, Seb.
I can quickly answer. I mean, the resolution is very straightforward, and it echoes the resolution that was already adopted in Geneva. So states who are basically against the first operational paragraph, which is the one that says that the UNGA recognize the right to healthy environments. And so it's really, there might be some additional suggestions and amendments and attempts to include elements that make it less strong, but that's really the part that we need to safeguard the most, and all the rest as well. And then I just wanted to say that there are the opportunities we have provided are the minimum that we could do, but in countries that are most opposing, we can go beyond. So we can strategize together with different organizations, we can do joint letters, we can do media together and so on. So yeah. Feel free. I think we will provide a lot of information by email to all participants.
Mm-hmm. And I need to check also the hands. Thank you, Roberto. You were helping me to identify people who were raising their hands. I don't see you all on the same screen, but I don't see any new hands unless I've missed someone. But we have also a list of states that Seb put in the chat, just also as an interesting information. The one who supported the resolution in Geneva in different ways. So you know, we will also provide that information, and I think we will, as Chiara was saying, I think it was a good concluding word to a certain extent, is that we will provide information in writing to the people who have registered as well, right? And the documents that we had put on the slides, including Chiara's slide on what we can provide, the advocacy brief, and the different opportunities to engage. So I think, unless colleagues, I forgot something and someone want to come with concluding words. I don't see anyone. I don't see anyone. So yes, Victoria. Sorry, Victoria. I think you're muted, Victoria.
Thank you. Sorry for that. Just wanted to add and emphasize at the end that while the resolution of the UN General Assembly, all the resolutions are not binding, the recognition by the UNGA of the right to a healthy environment would still catalyze support towards the legal protection of these human rights. And it would set a new standard of achievement and encourage more effective legal and practical actions all over the world. And I think it's was important to emphasize this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. And that was a good conclusion. Yeah, I see quite some more questions, so I don't know if I can expand too much. Yes, I see also some colleagues who managed to answer. We think, and Astrid is responding on the US, this was one of the big, obviously, force against the resolution. It was not helping, and now the decision has been changing a bit, and so the US should be a bit more supportive. So we are quite hopeful that it will be important to mobilize other states. And Nigeria was, I guess, absent from pretty much from the debate, as were other, unfortunately, African states. So for those of you who are in Africa and can mobilize specific states, African states should be mobilized for the GA, because again, it's not that these states are per se really against the resolution. It's just that at times they have less capacity to also follow these discussions. Like in Geneva, they have smaller missions at times, or less capacity to engage. So really mobilize, and I think that was also the recap from I guess Astrid or someone else, that really, let's make a lot of Noel, sorry, let's make a lot of noise around this process. And also the Caribbean, some states in the Caribbean or the Pacific, I mean, some of the smaller missions and countries that have less capacity are not per se against the resolution. They just need to be, their attention need to be drawn to this process, and they need to be mobilized. So all of you who come from all these different countries, we just encourage you to make noise with them. So yes, we need Nigeria, we need all of your countries on board. So try to use the material we will be sharing, try to keep in touch, and we hope that we can reconvene such a broader meeting, hopefully when we have the resolution at the latest. So with that, I would like to maybe close this round. I hope it was useful. I thank you so much, everyone, and our interpreters and all the colleagues who have helped with the inputs, and all of you who have had patience to stay with us for this hour. So with that, really a lot of luck for all of you in your activities. Take care.